Hello, very beautiful community. It's lovely to be with you after a couple of difficult health days away. We're going to look at Mr. Putin addressing his military and saying essentially two things. Number one, that he's ready to fight on, and that as things stand, that's probably what he's going to have to do. And number two, that he's going to wait for the European elites, which he dislikes, to be replaced by the kind of elites that are going to be accommodating to him. So Putin is referencing what we often talk about, the democratic decline that leads to politicians coming to power who want to break the democratic game. That's what Putin is waiting for in Europe. Let's listen to him a bit and translate as we go and give a little bit of analysis. The aims of the special military operation will undoubtedly be achieved. We would have preferred to eliminate the initial causes of the conflict with the help of diplomacy. But if the opposing side and their foreign patrons are going to refuse substantive dialogue, then Russia will attain the liberation of its historical lands, the historical lands it is entitled to by military means. And at this point, it's very important that we, at least in a cartoonish sense, understand what a reasonable definition of Russia's historical lands might be. And it's this. Russia's historical lands, insofar as they're to be found in sovereign Ukraine, are those lands the possession of which by Russia will sufficiently destabilize the Ukrainian state, such as to put its existence in doubt, or put its existence independent of the Kremlin in doubt. So what's very fascinating about the multi-directional talks going on now is how important the question of territory is in them, but how unimportant the question of territory is in the question of territory, because the question of territory is important for the Kremlin as a political goal. Again, this is not a territorial war. President Trump says that if he were president, when the full-scale invasion started, and nothing of the kind would have happened. It's possible that that is so because the previous administration consciously brought this story to an armed conflict. And I think that it's clear why they did that. Everybody believed that in a very short period of time, Russia will be destroyed, broken up. The European, wow, what a word. It's not swine, but swinki. It's more little swines, baby swines, than swines, but it's not quite that. It's sort of like not yet swines or pre-swines, with a kind of fascinating implication of a sort of disgusting and weak actor who is going to position themselves underneath some kind of greater power, so that in a very malevolent way they could in this manner meet their own gratuitous interests. So there's this kind of indirect reference to the repulsive interests of the West European countries and their repulsive subservience and smallness to the United States. And so these underling piglings immediately plug themselves into the work of the previous administration, the Biden administration, in the hope of not benefiting from, but in the hope of getting the indulgence of vitalistically scavenging in a life-enhancing way on the resources of a collapsed Russia. It's not we who in 2022 began the war. It's the destructive forces in Ukraine with the support of the West. And in reality, the West itself. In a sense, when it boils down to it, what it boils down to is that the West itself began this war in 2022. We're only trying to finish it. We didn't start it. At first, we tried to resolve it by peaceful means in Minsk, as you might remember, but then we were forced to bring a military component to the table because we understood that we were being tricked. And so that's another very fascinating element of Putin's discourse, because he aims to mobilize sentiment about the ghastliness of the West by pointing out that they break promises. Now, I survived this entire 1.5 hour event for your benefit, beautiful community, so I know that elsewhere in this speech, Putin said, and it wasn't just Putin, it was also Belousov speaking, the defense minister, but Putin said that they were promising us to not expand NATO 1 inch to the east at the end of the Cold War, and we've already talked about that line. So I won't re-legislate an analysis of it now. But here's the problem. Putin is mobilizing sentiment against the West by saying the West is duplicitous, hypocritical, sort of venal in its sort of naked pursuit of its interest, while sort of pampering itself in self-indulgent ideological discourse about human rights and liberal democracy. But Putin says the West is ghastly, hypocritical, and calamitous in all kinds of ways, and it constantly tricks Russia. It constantly betrays Russia and tricks Russia, betrays its promises. But the question arises, who was in charge of Russia during the last quarter century? And how do you square, Mr. Putin, your story that Russia is constantly tricked, constantly demoted, constantly on the wrong end of broken promises? But if you're in charge of Russia, Mr. Putin, it's you who is constantly being played. So, effectively, if only Russian citizens listened more intently to what Putin is saying, he's actually just saying, look, I'm weak and I've been tricked again and again and again and again and again. My whole career is just being tricked by the West. Look at poor me. I've got tricked there. I got tricked here. I'm going to get tricked again over there. It's just terrible. Poor me. Well, if you're getting tricked all the time, Mr. Putin, then you're not a very effective tyrant. As before, we're ready to engage in negotiations and resolve all the problems that have arisen in recent years by peaceful means. The administration in the United States demonstrates this readiness. We're dialoguing with them. I hope the same will happen with Europe. It's very unlikely that it's possible with the acting elites in Europe today. But eventually it will happen as a consequence of our inexorable consolidation. And if not now, And if not now with the current European politicians, then it'll come with the change of elites in Europe. So what Putin is saying is that his theory of victory over the West is democratic decline and domestic Western politics. That all he needs to do is wait. And the kind of approach he is now benefiting from, coming from the United States, is going to come from Europe too. It's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of these sort of venal, hypocritical, liberal, democratic, technocratic, centrist elites being replaced by the AfD, by authoritarian populism, by Nigel Farage, by equivalent politicians in different European countries. And what's concerning about that, of course, is that Putin dramatically exaggerates this coming transformation, but it's not as though the transformation isn't on its way. It's not as though the transformation is not coming. It is coming, and Mr. Putin is half right about this. He's half wrong because he exaggerated, but he's half right. The political trend in Europe is very much to bring it about that we have Putin-friendly politicians in power in Western countries. Luckily, this is less inevitable than Putin makes it out to be. And luckily, even in the worst case scenario, that transformation is going to be far less complete than Mr. Putin would like it to be. But unfortunately, the trend that he is relying on, while not being as gloriously favorable to him as he would make it out, it's real and it's there. Lots of love. Talk soon.